Hello and welcome back to the Across the Pod NFL podcast. It's time for another bit of off-season content here on the podcast, and today I've got a special guest with me. So today it's all about building the perfect NFL quarterback. So me and my three guests have been assigned each a different body part as we try and assemble the best NFL quarterback that's ever lived. And at the end of the episode, I will pick a random team via spin the wheel, and we will try and determine how far this team could go with this quarterback in the postseason. So I've got three lads with me today from the Third and Long podcast. Our first guest coming into the show now is, of course, one of our 49ers fans. Back with us today is Ollie Hope. Ollie, how are things?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me again, Andy. It's always a pleasure coming on this podcast, and I'm looking forward to building the perfect NFL quarterback.
Should be a good episode. I'm looking forward to having you on. Now, in terms of body parts, I've been given the arm, and Ollie has been given the durability factor of the quarterback. And just to clarify as well, there's a couple of rules in this show. First of all, the same player can't be picked twice, and they have to be current players, which that one I didn't quite alert to the boys before a couple of hours ago. So I think there's been some last-minute audibles called from the boys to try and change some of their quarterbacks. So our third guest coming on today is Patriots fan Ollie Butler Henderson. Ollie, how are things, my man?
Good to be back, my friend. Good to be back. Looking forward to having two defeats against the Dolphins this year.
Well, I'm afraid, mate, you're going to get zero results from that. I think you guys are in a rebuild, and I think that whilst, in 5 years' time, maybe, but I think right now your team's going to maybe struggle again for one more year.
Well, I did see CBS say we're going to have 6 wins, which that's an improvement from last year, so I'll take that.
Small improvements. So, Ollie, you've been given the assignment of the legs of the quarterback. So interesting.
Yeah, that last minute.
Yeah, off camera, then he had picked Michael Vick, but then I kind of forgot to tell the boys that it should have been current players. So that rules out Big Ben from durability. That was obviously a shoot.
I had you Brett Favre.
Did you? Okay.
Yes.
Well, that was a little bit of a balls at my end, but hopefully you boys have still found someone to pick. And then our final guest, who is the only one here not wearing NFL gear, he's wearing, fittingly with the Euro starting this week, he's wearing his England top. Back with us is another 49ers fan in Third and Long's, Phil Perrins. Phil, how are you?
I am grand, Andy. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, all good. I'm looking forward to the Euros. I was saying to Ollie off camera that I actually do cheer on England in the Euros, even though most of my friends in my school never cheer on England in football. I don't in the rugby, to be fair. But I do feel like I do still want the British team to do well, whether it's Scotland or whether it's England. I do still like to see British teams do well, which I know a lot of fellow Welshmen don't agree with my views on that. But I do have family from Liverpool, to be fair, and so yeah, I have a little bit of a get-out clause.
My dad.
You're not English.
Me, I know it's hard to believe, isn't it? My accent's not there at all. Although saying that I am where I live right now, where I'm from, Monmouth, it's like a 5-minute drive from England, so that's why the accent's probably not the strongest.
My dad's Welsh. He was born in Rhyl, and my dad's one of those Welshmen where he's Welsh when it's convenient for him. So like St David's Day, when the Welsh rugby team do well, when Gareth Bale was on prime. Like he's one of those Welshmen, but like even though I'm technically half, I was born in the northeast. I'm a proper Geordie, so I probably love my country.
Yeah, I mean, I like
and all of England's greatest ever footballers have been Geordies.
I mean, my partner's Welsh, so she goes really well. She takes a mick on me. I go really Birmingham sometimes, which is quite funny. So, yeah.
Ollie, how's it going? Like.
I do probably like that, especially when I'm annoyed. I get really Birmingham.
I can hear it now. I couldn't hear it before, but now I can. Now you said that, I actually can hear a little bit of the Birmingham twang in you.
Oh yes.
Unfortunately, of course, we mentioned body parts. So Phil has been given the assignment of the eyes, which basically means vision. And also Shane is meant to be here, but Shane can't make it. He had the option of the brain, so he was like things like clutchness and mentality and stuff like that. So I may as well go to him first, seeing as he has left me his answer. So we will start this episode now with our brain part of the episode. Shane's gone for Aaron Rodgers, which I'm not sure how I feel about that, because the man that dropped the bong at MetLife Stadium and likes to go on these, long retreats. So I do question his ability, and also for a guy that's lost so many playoff games in big moments. Had 1 year he made one Super Bowl and that's it. I do question that, but fair enough. I think there's other areas I maybe would have picked him other than eyes. But that is Shane's pick. So we've gone for Aaron Rodgers as the eyes of our quarterback. Next up, not the eyes, the brain. That's a brain fart for me. Phil, you got the but brain, yeah, I question that a lot. I mean, I think if you had old players, it would be Tom Brady. I think that's the obvious one, the most clutch player, certainly clutch quarterback in NFL history.
Surely you would have gone for Mahomes.
That was one of his backups. He gave me a backup, but he's given me Aaron Rodgers, which, again, the brain has probably been slightly infected with marijuana the last couple of years. In my personal prediction off the field, I think that's what these retreats have been like for him. But yeah, he has gone for him as the brain. I mean, to be fair, I've not seen a more naturally talented quarterback. And in terms of pure throwing ability, which could go down to arm, to be fair, but I think for natural ability, I think he has the most natural throw motion I've ever seen. And maybe you could argue in that sense he's gone for maybe the ability to see what he sees down the field. But yeah, if you are listening, Shane, I probably would have gone for a different part of the body for him. But
we're giving some abuse on that one.
Yeah, I think when you go on Thursday's show, you got to make sure you bring that up because I think I question that pick a lot. But at the end of the day, it's his pick for a reason. Now, next up part of the body will be the eyes, the vision. So that is mentality, that is clutchness, that is ability to perform under pressure, and also the ability to target players down the field, and overall accuracy with in his hands. So, Mr. Perrins, we are back with you. So which part of the quarterback? So, which quarterback is going to make the part of the quarterback which is the eyes?
So before I got your message earlier, I was actually like looking at quarterbacks from like the last 20, 30 years because like my initial point was obviously having such a great vision across the field, and I just went back to like who do I think is like the perfect quarterback for that, and I initially thought like Joe Montana from like The Catch in '81 or like his game-winning drive against the Bengals in '88, and then when I started thinking about like the likes of like John Elway. Because when we think of like the vision, we do tend to think of like those more aged quarterbacks, the ones that have been around for quite some time that have done it, like you said, in clutch. Obviously, I can't pick Montana, I can't pick Elway. Then I did think about like, well, then Brady. Brady's obviously in the discussion in terms of like everything, and can't pick Brady. But like initially, I was actually going to pick Aaron Rodgers for vision because just some of his game-winning clutch drives where he's like thrown, like he's yeeted it down the field for like a Hail Mary, and he's managed to, actually pick a pass into like a complete ocean of like defenders, and he's managed to pull it off. But saying that, I think like the modern kind of like brilliant quarterback with his vision is obviously Pat Mahomes. Like, how can you not look past Pat Mahomes? I mean, some of the passes he can do, that like the no-look passes, his field of vision is phenomenal. He could probably top in a lot of different categories as well between the rest of us, but I just think his vision is just exceptional. Like, he's just awareness on the field is phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me personally, he is probably definitely a top 10 already. You could argue maybe a top 5 quarterback of all time already because he's got 3 rings. Only a handful of quarterbacks have got 3 rings or more. Look at Bradshaw, you look at Brady. Not many. He's got more rings than Manning, more rings than Elway.
Montana, with forgetting Montana.
Montana with his. I still think he's got 4 or 5 now. I know he's got the second most. I want to say he's got 5.
So Joe Montana has 4. Steve Young has 3. Bradshaw has 5.
Yeah, Teddy Bradshaw has 5.
Brady has 6.
Brady has 7.
Oh, Brady's got 7. Sorry, I apologize. Brady's got 7. I think that's it actually in the echelon. Elway's got 2. The Manning brothers, between the 2 of them, have got 4. Rodgers has 1. Dilfer has 1.
Had to bring Dilfer into it. Warner has 2, doesn't he?
Troy Aikman has 3. Johnny Unitas has.
Kurt Warner has 2, doesn't he?
Nope, 1.
One.
He won it for the Great Show on Turf.
2 appearances.
Kurt Warner. I was about 2 when Kurt Warner was.
3
Drew Brees got
appearances.
1.
2 of the Rams.
Yeah, I was about 2 when Kurt Warner was playing. So
What? I wasn't even born when the 49ers won the first Super Bowl, and I still know. That's like throwing age into the equation. There's no excuse. Like, no excuse.
yeah, but
Have you ever noticed?
I'm not a Rams fan.
Have you ever
That's
noticed
true.
that that's always Ollie's get out of car?
Yeah. To be fair, I purposely haven't watched. I purposely haven't watched Underdog purely because it's about the Rams. Like, that's how bitter I am as a 49er.
Well,
I won't watch it.
I'd watch it. It's good.
No, I don't want to watch a film where the Rams beat the 49ers and Kurt Warner wins a Super Bowl. I'm not interested in that.
It's not really about that, though.
But it is. It's literally the season where they win the Super Bowl. I don't want to watch that.
To be fair, I couldn't sit here and watch. I can't watch the the thing is the documentary recently about Alex Ferguson and the treble winning season. I just can't watch that.
Yeah.
I don't think I could watch anything if the Bills were to eventually, which is probably very unlikely. If the Bills were ever to win a Super Bowl, I'm not watching America's game from that year. I just refuse to point out to even contemplate.
Andy,
they've called me so much heartache.
Andy, do you struggle watching the first Ace Ventura film because oh, for God's sake, Ray Finkel missed. Lace is out.
I'm more worried about watching it. Is it Any Given Sunday?
To be fair, Any Given Sunday is perfect because it's got like no NFL teams because Roger Goodell banned any NFL team from being associated with her. So like it's perfect because it's the Miami Sharks, and it's all those teams like that.
I love that on what's the one with Keanu Reeves? Replacements. That one has got some random teams. It's like Washington is like completely different color scheme to what they wear. And it's a real curveball. But yeah, so we've got brain with Aaron Rodgers and we've got eyes vision with Patrick Mahomes. We've got 2 of our 5 components of the quarterback done. Next up is going to be the arm of the quarterback, which comes to me. Now, my first thought was Mahomes because we've seen him in the past. You've seen him, especially in his first couple of years, especially when he first broke through. He was throwing balls like the length of the stadium, and I think the way his career's gone, he has probably died down on that slightly. I think the first year, rookie year, was when he saw probably his arm at his most fiercest, but I think he's become a lot more methodical, a lot more patient in his play. So I've gone for a guy that, thankfully, I'm going for his vision because he can be quite careless with the ball, but you can't argue against his arm talent. I'm going for Josh Allen as my arm. I think you can say all the interceptions what you want. There's a lot of interceptions, but if we're going purely for how strong his arm is, I think there's not many better than Josh Allen. For me, he is Brett Favre 2.0. I think the carelessness and the arm talent. I think this quarterback you look at Kirk Cousins and Tua, where they are struggle in playoff games and you never really have faith in them to go and get the job done. But with Josh Allen, he may lose games by throwing picks, but at the same time, you watch him in most playoff games he's played in. He's been making the Bills at least involved and competitive, and he's been the reason why they've been involved in games so close in games. Now, Phil, you had your hand up then. I didn't quite.
Yeah. Sorry. It's not as profound. Do you think because I'm glad you said that because I've been thinking about that with Josh Allen and like the comparison between Brett Favre. Now, Brett Favre only won 1 Super Bowl, and that was in '94, where like the Packers were at that. No, not '94. Sorry, it was '96. Do you think that because of that likeness to Brett Favre, he'll never quite get that ring? Like, do you think? Because they do ride and die on him playing well, like he can win games, but he can also lose your games. But do you think that recklessness, because he's not a young quarterback anymore, I mean, he's getting into more or less his prime, Do you think that might be like the stinkler of like him never really, getting that Lombardi for Buffalo?
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's that. I think the fact that he's got Mahomes and his confidence will always be a hindrance. I think if he's in the NFC, he'd probably have 2 or 3 appearances in the Super Bowl by now. I think if he's in a different conference, it'd be a different story. And I do think that he may one day have the chance. I think Brett Favre got his chance. John Elway got his chance later on in his career to get. So I think he may get one chance. I think there'll be a time. The law of averages suggests that at least one time in his career, the Bills will beat the Chiefs in a playoff game. I think that will happen. I do worry for him because right now he's lost his best 2 receivers from last year. Whilst I do think Khalil Shakir is underrated, I think he could have a big rise this year. I just question whether him losing Diggs may be a factor, and he may have maybe a down year, and maybe 2 or 3 years' time he may get a new receiver in the draft or free agency or whatever trade. And I do think that, potentially then you look at that could be his chance to maybe win one. But I do worry about him for the next couple of years. And I do worry as well. I think as well, you look at comparisons, I think his body type and the way he plays. Unfortunately, I think Cam Newton is one you can compare him to because they're both very similar in stature and they both use their bodies so much in play. And I think obviously Cam Newton was more of a running quarterback, but Josh Allen does, I think, through the Bills' game plan, but also his kind of style of play, you do often see him use his body a bit too much and use his legs maybe too much. Yeah. And you worry about him long term, whether he can sustain that amount of hits, because I think he almost enjoys it more when he's getting hit. I think he almost thrives off the contact of it. I do worry for him in terms of that, as whether he can last as long as Brett Favre did or last as long as other quarterbacks have, even with the modern day science. So I do worry for him in that sense. But I do feel like, and I hate to say it, I do feel he will get at least one chance to win a Super Bowl. He'll have at least one appearance by the time he finishes his career. Now, I don't know whether that's this year, 5 years' time, 10 years' time, a couple of years' time, but I do feel like he will get a Super Bowl appearance eventually because I think he is just that good. I think eventually his defense will actually play well for once in a big game. And I think if the defense actually plays well and everything comes together, I think they always have a chance with Josh Allen. He keeps them in games with a lot of quarterbacks. Maybe, they have all the regular season stats, they have all the talent in the world, but like Dak Prescott as well, I mentioned Tua and Cousins before. I think, they have all this great play in the regular season, but comes to the postseason, and how often do you see him, or even in big games in the regular season, how often do you see them actually be the reason why they win games, or how often do you look at them down the field in the pocket, 2-minute warning? How many of you would actually have confidence in them being the reason why they win the game? I don't think many. I think Josh Allen is that factor. I think obviously Mahomes obviously is in that bracket. I think you can look at CJ Stroud from what he did last year. And I think there's certain quarterbacks where, in the Tom Brady, obviously the classic example in the past where that 2-minute warning, they're down the field, 40-yard line, you could put your whole mortgage on them going down and throwing a winning touchdown. Whereas I don't think other quarterbacks have that same factor. Now, Ollie, sorry, non-baby hope, Ollie. You had your hand
That's
up.
really sticking, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, mate, it's on everything. Even when you go on another podcast in a few weeks, I'm going to make sure they call you baby. Obviously, I know baby hope's verdict on this one, but is it all on Josh Allen? Is it this guy McDermott like controlling it as well and saying, right, you don't need to throw the Hail Mary passes like Belichick did with Brady, like Andy Reid does with Mahomes? He controls it a little bit more, keeps him on a little bit on a leash, so he's not doing stupidity things. Is it McDermott stopping them going that little bit further, or is it purely on Josh Allen, you think?
I think the way they scheme a lot of the games, it's just constantly him putting his body on the line. I do think that is down to a lot of it on the game plan. I mean, I remember I was in Buffalo last season for the Bills-Bucks game, and I was spending a lot of time in the tailgate with Bills fans, and I stayed with a friend of mine, friend of the show, Dave Prosh, who they were saying it was that point in the year where they were struggling to win games, and it was a point in the year actually where they turned their season around. They were starting to get they were struggling to win games, but they got the job done against the Bucks. And I remember the pretty much talk was before the game and after the game, just let Josh be Josh. I think they were pretty much in the boat that they need Josh to use his legs, and that's how he is at his best. And I think that's when you saw I think you saw a swift change from the first half of the season. I forget the guy's name now, the coordinator who was there before and got sacked mid-season.
Ken Dorsey?
Yeah.
Whoever it was, I remember he let go. Again, I forgot the guy's name. Joe Brady. Was it Joe Brady comes in?
Yeah, it was Joe Brady.
He goes back to the old method they had before the season started with Josh Allen, use his legs first and use it that way. So yeah, I feel like that is almost it's almost their biggest strength, but it can be their biggest weakness. I think long term as well. I think that could affect him long term. But I think sometimes you could think maybe it's a bit predictable. Maybe you could argue, obviously, but with Diggs they should have been past it a bit more. But at the same time, I think you get Josh Allen when he's at his best, when he's doing what he's doing, when he's using his legs, when he's getting in contact and all that. There's not many better quarterbacks to watch, and I think he is electric when he's on it. And I think that it's hard to really go away from that, because if that's sort of the Panthers, same issue the Panthers had. If your biggest strength is your quarterback being mobile, and that's what's brought you success and won your games, how do you then say suddenly we're going to change from that and go a whole new game plan, a whole new scheme? It's hard to do that. So for me, I think Josh Allen is the reason they win games, but also I think he can also be the reason they lose games, as well as their defense, which has been a problem. Certainly last season at times when you look at the Chiefs game where he's putting up crazy numbers with Gabe Davis in that divisional round game in 2021. Defense just kept giving away points, and you look at the Bills game against the Chiefs. Obviously, that's probably more down to the missed kick with Tyler Bass. So I think he needs at some point this defense to step up in big games. I think there's been a few games now in recent years in the big spots where they've almost had to score 30 points just to even be involved in the conversation, and sometimes they're winning games like 30-28 or stuff like that. So for me, yeah, it's an interesting one with him. Ollie, you had your hand up. Sorry, I keep missing these hands up at the start.
I was just going to say that I think Sean McDermott does tend to err on the side of caution when he calls his plays. So I do think that doesn't help Josh Allen. And I've said this a few times on the Third and Long podcast, but when Buffalo were in England this year, I was sat next to quite a, let's call it, passionate Bills fan.
Vocal
Bills fan. And he was screaming at Sean McDermott for the entire game. And towards the end of the game, he stormed out and yelled over his shoulder, "Tell Sean McDermott." So as he was leaving with about 2 minutes to go. So although I don't think Sean McDermott needs to do that, I do not think that they will win a Super Bowl under him, because kind of similar to Shanahan in a way, because I think Shanahan does do this too. I think he's too cautious in his play calling.
I've said this for years now. I've said on the podcast loads of times where I think there's a lot of coaches in the league that are good but not great. I think that you look at, obviously Andy Reid is the best example. He's probably Sean McVay as well. They're winners. They draw. You can rely on them in big games to draw the game plan, and that will win you the game. But I think there's some quarterbacks. Sorry, some head coaches. You look at Mike Tomlin's one example of this. I think Sean McDermott's one example of this. I do think Mike McDaniel's one of these as well, where they're good head coaches, but I do question whether they're great head coaches. Now, Shanahan, I'll give benefit of doubt because he's made 2 Super Bowls, which those two haven't. Or Tomlin's won a Super Bowl, but hasn't done in years gone by. And I think he has gone a bit stale in this kind of coaching. But look at the sort of new up-and-coming head coaches, and I do feel like, yeah, with Dermott, I think he's a good coach for the regular. He'll win you 12 games. He'll get you in the regular season. He's good for that. He'll get you into the playoffs, probably division winners, if not at least a wildcard spot. I do question whether he is a guy that can take you that one step further and take you to, the promised land, take you to a Super Bowl. Or he's only made one AFC title game in this whole time. And I know the Chiefs are there. I know Mahomes is there in the conference. But, these are the breaks, and that's how you have to feel that. If you want to, if you want to, Josh Allen and Dermott want to win more games, just go to the NFC if they want to do that. So for me, yeah, I think there's a lot of head coaches will have that same issue where they're just not, they haven't yet proven they can do it on the big stage. I think McDermott is that example of that. And I think there was definitely some concern last year over him when they were going for the bad spell. But then obviously things turned around and they ended up somehow winning that division. Right. Moving on to our next part of the body, which is going to be legs, which is with Ollie Butler Henderson. Now, Ollie, we've had Rodgers, we've had Mahomes, we've had Josh Allen. those. Obviously, I doubt you were picking Mahomes or Rodgers for legs, but
I've written Josh Allen down. I had Josh Allen down. This is after we got told that I can't have Michael Vick. And as a damn, can't have Michael Vick. And then as I also looked at Vick, I also looked at Cam Newton, because when they were playing, when they were in their prime, they were unstoppable at the run game. They were brilliant. I mean, you look at some of the ones that we've got out there now. You've got Justin Fields, who's a very good scrambler. I referenced it several times when he put Niner players' defenses on the arse when he scored against them that one game a couple of years ago. Then you got just Jalen Hurts, incredibly strong, squat 600 kilograms or whatever it is. I do think Jaden Daniels is going to be absolutely a superb runner with the ball. He's got that physique. He's shown it many times playing at college for LSU. But we take the mick out of Shane an awful lot about his quarterback being a running back. And you can't outlook what that guy can do, and it is Lamar Jackson's legs, I think.
Yeah, I think that was the one I expected the most out of all the ones, all the ones that I was planning for as 5. And I think, also I knew what I was picking, or I knew I had my 3 players in mind. And I think that was one I thought was the most clear, I think, because I think there's not many of the quarterbacks. I think Josh Allen probably is the second best or third best running quarterback. I think Hurts certainly that season was a lot of, 1 yard, 2 yard tush push sort of touchdowns, whereas Lamar Jackson, the amount of touchdowns we've seen from him where he's used his legs, I think more so in his first MVP year, I don't think he was more, I'd say he used his arm better than his legs. I think the most recent MVP year, but I think that first year of his MVP year, where I remember the one against the Bengals where he did like a full 180 spin and scored. I remember the second game of the year or first year against us where he's absolutely destroyed. I think they won 59-0 or something like that on the first game of the season at Hard Rock. I remember him just tearing us apart, and he has. I think it's night and day the best legs in the league, and I think that it's best we've seen probably since Michael Vick. I think Cam Newton was a great mobile quarterback, but I think a lot of it was down to his strength as well as his speed. Whereas I think Lamar Jackson, for pure speed alone, there's not many. I think in NFL history that have had better legs than him. I think you put him against a lot of receivers and running backs, he'd probably give a good cat myself when it comes to a race, like a 40-yard dash or 100-meter race. I think he would be up there. I think he is a clear and an obvious choice, I think, at the legs position. When there was anyone else in mind for you, you mentioned Allen and Cam, was there anyone else you were sort of thinking of, or was it?
We put a simulcast against Lamar Jackson against Patrick Mahomes, because we know he loves those simulcasts, Patrick Mahomes. When they're done the combine, how much slow Mahomes is. I do wonder what Deshaun Watson would have been like if he his misdemeanors and if he hadn't been a threat at Houston, what he could have been like, because he was great at scrambling, get moved around. Russell Wilson was another one in his primer days when he was a bit younger, when he was at Seahawks, when they were going to Super Bowls. They were there, but you look at it and it's like you can't really look past Lamar, really, can you? That's my opinion of it, really, personally.
Now, you mentioned Sean Watson there. I remember, I don't know whether you boys went to it as well, but I remember that game against the Jags or Texans in London.
Oh my God.
That is by far, I've been to games in America. That is still, for me, by far the best individual performance I've seen from any, certainly quarterback, in any game live. I mean, I saw
not even balls.
No, God, no. I mean, I've seen Kelce score 4 touchdowns at Arrowhead. I've seen Kamara score 3 touchdowns against the Raiders for the Saints. But I remember that performance in Wembley where the amount of times the O-line was letting him down and players just coming at him. The amount of times he avoided pressure and just evaded and just got a pass out of the blue basically and found his receiver. I mean, he was my favorite quarterback in the league before 2021 hit. I used to love watching him play. I loved him at the Texans. The Texans were sort of like a soft spot team for me. I just loved watching him play so much. I loved the celebration. I loved everything about watching him play. But obviously now I can't ever really cheer him on. And he's obviously not even playing that good to even warrant being like Luis Suarez back in the day. Luis Suarez, he was a horrible man. I'm not even doubting that. But because he was so good, and he played for your team. You loved him as a result, but I was fully aware that
No.
everyone else hated him. But
no, never ever loved Suarez. He can do one.
No, everyone hated him.
He wasn't very nice to Paddy Evra.
Literally only us and Uruguay fans that liked him, and maybe Barca fans when he joined them. But with Watson, it's not even as if now he is playing like his old self and being the horrible man that he is. He's not even playing well now. So yeah, it's really is someone you can't really root for at all. And I think you're right. Scrambling wise, he was brilliant at it, and it's a shame how it's gone, really. But yeah, I think certainly if it hadn't all happened the way it has, he might have been, as you said, a contender. Right. Finally, the final part of our quarterback, which is going to be the durability. This is health related. So, you think of like RG3, that is the most obvious answer to not be it. I think there's certain quarterbacks. I think Joe Burrow might be falling into that category recently with his health concerns. You look at other quarterbacks, Jimmy G in the past, we mentioned it in the group chat.
Andy Luck.
Yeah. Trey Lance, I think, recently had a lot of bad luck through injury. I think Dak had some bad injuries. And I think there's some quarterbacks where you look at them, they never, ever really seem to get injured. So, Ollie, or Baby Hope, as we like to call you, who is your quarterback at durability?
So I was going to go for Brett Favre because he had the biggest consecutive starts. But obviously, we're doing normal quarterbacks. At the moment, it's Josh Allen with the longest active streak. But again, he's already been picked. So I think I'm actually going to go for Russell Wilson, who played every game from his rookie season in 2012 until a game in 2021, all for Seattle. So he played 149 regular season games. And during this time, especially in the early part of his career, he was using his legs a lot and was getting hit a lot and was, coming back and staying healthy. So I think I'm going to go for Russell Wilson for the durability.
Interesting. Now, obviously, he's one of the main headline talks in the off-season. Obviously, made his move to the Steelers after an unfortunate 2 years in Denver. Well, I think personally he was improving towards the end of his time, but obviously that wasn't enough for Sean Payton. Now he's going to head coach. I mentioned before Tomlin. I think, whilst I don't think he's the kind of guy that's going to take it to the Super Bowl anymore, he's a liable. He's never had a losing season. Now, how do you boys think he'll do there? Because I personally think he is set for a bounce back year. You've got a solid team there that, they won 9-10 games with Mason Rudolph or whoever else was quarterback last year. They've had winning seasons the last few years with really mediocre quarterback play. So for you boys, we'll go to you first, Ollie Hope, as it's obviously your most recent decision of you picked Wilson, of course, as your durability player. How do you think he'll do? Because if they can win 10 games with Mason Rudolph and Kenny Pickett, surely they can win that amount of games with Russell Wilson, right?
Yeah, well, as you said, Tomlin's never had a losing season. I believe the news came out very recently that Tomlin's just got a new, I think, 3-year deal with the Steelers.
Yep.
So he's definitely got some stability. And I think Wilson, you're right, Wilson was improving, well, especially during his second season in Denver. But I think the issue with Sean Payton is it wasn't his guy, because obviously. So I think his relationship with Payton was always going south. So I do think he will play better. But my issue is, do Pittsburgh really have the weapons to be able to have a high-power offense to go deep in the playoffs? And I'm worried that if Wilson doesn't start playing well, how long it will take the fans to start calling for Fields, because obviously he's also joined the Steelers this offseason.
And so, weirdly, he's been apparently taking running back snaps in training. But I think you're right. You look at, obviously, running back room's great. You got Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, both good running backs. You got George Pickens, but that's about it. If Van Jefferson is your second best receiver, I think the second most used will be Pat Frymouth at tight end. But I think if your second best wide receiver is Van Jefferson, there are going to be some problems for him potentially.
It's not going to be Van Jefferson. It's going to be Roman Wilson. It's going to be the rookie out of Michigan.
Yeah, he was down as a third choice on ESPN. Now, obviously, this could change nearer time to the season beginning. Now, one issue they may have in terms of just losing record, we'll go to you, Phil, on this, is their back end of their schedule. Now, their first half is pretty favourable. They've got the Falcons, Broncos, Chargers, Colts, Cowboys, Raiders, Jets, and Giants. Bye week, then Commanders. Then, this is where it gets tough, right, Phil? So this could affect Tomlin's losing team, especially for a team that does get better normally second half of the season. They do sometimes struggle the first 8 games or so. Then from week 11 to week 18, they've got the Ravens, the Browns, the Bengals, the Browns, the Eagles, the Ravens, the Chiefs, and the Bengals. That is, I don't think I've seen a harder run down the stretch than that.
I think this season is going to be the first season that Tomlin's going to not get 0.500 on his schedule, on his win-loss record. Just going back onto Russell Wilson for a second, whether or not I see him as whether or not he's going to succeed. It depends on the Russell Wilson that we get. If we're going to get like the Russell Wilson that he was playing in under prime Pete Carroll and the Legion of Boom, but towards the end of his tenure at Seattle, he wasn't playing well. He was making silly mistakes. He's been at Denver. Yes, the Denver kind of like horror show has been up in the air. But I've said before in our pod, I'm not a massive fan of Sean Payton. I don't think he's despite the fact that he was a quarterback, and he was originally built up his reputation of being like this quarterback whisperer. You have to keep in mind he was playing with he had Drew Brees, and Drew Brees is one of the all-time greats. So I don't really know how much input Sean Payton had in making Drew Brees as great as Drew Brees eventually became in the NFL. He was called out lots of times, not just under Sean Payton, but in the previous coaching scheme as well, that he didn't particularly meld well with his teammates. Don't forget, like his partner Ciara is a pop star, and he fell into that kind of like that celebrity kind of like social circle. So it depends what kind of like, if he's still got that, what they say, like he's still got the dog in him. And I don't think Russell's going to have the dog in him. He's going into a Pittsburgh team where, hell, he's not even dead on really lasting the season as QB1. They don't particularly have like the strongest offensive weapons. Yes, the defense is still going to be absolutely stacked. You've still got TJ Watt, but that second half of the season schedule, I mean, I'd be surprised if Russell finishes the season as the starting quarterback. I think if it even looks like they might be tanking, I could see Justin Fields being brought in a lot earlier, because yes, Russell got better towards the end of the season before they eventually benched him forevermore. He was still making mistakes that you don't even see in high school. Like, he was he wasn't even targeting open play. Like, actually, for instance, my high school team that I'm coaching at the moment, they make less mistakes at the quarterback position than I saw Russell Wilson make in the last couple of years. All right. And these are 14, 15-year-olds. Okay. They're just learning that every single play doesn't have to be a Hail Mary, and they're actually looking to target their receivers and actually move in the pocket. And that's something that I've seen Russell Wilson do, haven't seen him do, for a long, long time. And I think, that second half of the season, they're going to get absolutely destroyed, because that Browns defense is still tough. The Ravens are always tough. The Eagles are going to be tough. I don't really see them going into the offseason, going into their bye week, even with a winning record.
Yeah, it's just incredibly tough schedule, and I'll never forget when I watched Denver play the Colts on that Thursday game in Denver, and that was by far the worst game I've ever watched, and that was just the whole mutual feeling towards Wilson was horrible, and it was just really horrible seeing a quarterback who he's been great for so many years looking so bad, and he was just looked almost scared to get hit at times. It was a horrible, that first year, especially with Nathaniel Hackett. That is one of the more, I think you look at for teams who underwhelm, I think they got to be up there. It's one of the biggest underwhelmers for fact they really for the 2 years they had. If you told them before Russell Wilson came in, they trade for Russell Wilson, they get Sean Payton after a year, and they wouldn't make playoffs either year and be nowhere near it either year, I think you would have been shocked. And I think it's gone nowhere near to plan how they thought it would. And if they're saying right now that Zach Wilson has been the best performing quarterback in training camp or in OTAs, makes you wonder how good Bo Nix has been in the training. And if Zach Wilson is again a starter in the league, you think of that famous Breaking Bad thing was how can he get away with this? It feels like that was Zach Wilson. It's just how does he keep getting started? Like last year he got a lucky breakthrough Aaron Rodgers, but he was still getting starts even though it was a pretty abysmal year for him, and he's still getting starts over other quarterbacks in the room. And if he's there suiting up week one, I'll be like, I'll be to some quarterbacks where they don't get a chance, and he's got chance after chance with never really showing any sort of reason to be a starter. So for me, that would shock me, but that is for another time, another conversation. So we do have the brain of Aaron Rodgers, the eye/vision of Patrick Mahomes, the arm of Josh Allen. We have the legs of Lamar Jackson, and the durability of Russell Wilson, aka Mr. Unlimited. So now we are going to work out which team I'm going to randomly allocate him to. So I'm going to spin the wheel as we speak. So if I spin this, he's going to go to. This is actually kind of perfect. It's the Arizona Cardinals he's been chosen now. So if you pick a quarterback with all the things I mentioned there, with all the different quarterbacks combined in one. If you've got him to Marvin Harrison Jr., you've got him handing off to James Conner, it's not a great team. There's a reason why they were fourth overall last year in the draft board. Now, I think personally he can make him at least a 12-win team. If this quarterback is going to be there, if you've got a guy who can throw like Josh Allen, has got the mentality of Mahomes, and he's got the arm of Lamar Jackson, I think this quarterback should almost win games on their own. You mentioned before about quarterbacks winning games on their own, but I do question whether in big games, whether the defense would let him down. Ollie Butler Henderson, to you first. How many wins would you think this quarterback would get in the Arizona Cardinals' current offense?
I think you were a little bit harsh on Arizona. I don't think Arizona got better the more games Kyler Murray played last year.
Yeah.
And I do think if Kyler was fit and played the whole season, they possibly could be a double-figure team anyway. Because don't forget, season before he went down, that they were a playoff team. And they were, again, pushing for the playoffs before Kyler Murray went down. So I think it could be, obviously, if it's Lamar and it's, they're going to be taller than Kyler Murray anyway, so you can see over the O-line, so that gives them a little bit more scepter. So that's going to be an extra win. I reckon they'll win the division, and I reckon it'll be a 13-game win, 13-win season.
I mean, I'm looking at the depth chart now. I mean, you've got Harrison Jr., Michael Wilson, Zay Jones, Trey McBride, but I just think that, Harris Johnson Jr. has been a bit hit and miss since he came to the league. But the defense, really, I don't think there's many players there. You've got Buda Baker, obviously. Zaven Collins had his moments. And
Kazir White and Mac Wilson are very, very good linebackers.
Even with them, I don't know whether it's enough to, I just don't know right now. Obviously, given time they'd add players to this roster, especially if you can draw in if this quarterback can draw in players in free agency. If he's got all these traits, and he's probably the best quarterback in the league, if he's got all these traits with him, I think he probably would attract more players. But I just don't know. I think there's weapons in there, and there's certain studs on defense. But
Marvin Harrison's going to be an outstanding player in this league.
It's the best I've seen. The best pocket I've seen in years. I think personally he's a better prospect in college than maybe not Jamar Chase, but I think he's in that sort of last 10 years, he's got to be one of the biggest prospects. But I still question whether he's got enough. But at the same time, if you're struggling to find receivers, just if you use Lamar Jackson's legs, this quarterback, then he'll be, I think he'll be fine. Phil, to you, if you put the quarterback in the Cardinals offense and the roster, how many wins do you think this quarterback's getting?
I see them as a playoff. I could see them getting 11 wins. With that, now, when you said about a quality quarterback getting their teams to the playoffs, but like a defense letting them down, I just had instantly in my head, and this sounds really, really daft because it's not even defensive related. Anybody remember Eric Decker?
Oh my God, yes. Yeah.
All right, Eric Decker. When he played for the Denver Broncos, he was an elite wide receiver who was passing him the ball when he was playing for the Denver Broncos. Though who was throwing in those amazing passes?
That'd be Sir Peyton.
Sir Peyton Manalot. Okay, so Peyton Manning was throwing in these absolute doozies. He leaves the Broncos and he goes to the Jets, and his career. Why? Because he wasn't having a decent quarterback throw the ball to him or get the ball to him. So I think a absolute top tier quarterback can make average players look phenomenal and really get the best out of them, because you only have to use that vision, look for the movement, look down the field, anticipate it, all this kind of thing that we think about when we've created our elite quarterback. And I just think that they would be able to make really, average players succeed. Like, is Kendrick Bourne still at the Pats, Ollie? Or if I complete, yeah. When Kendrick was playing for the 49ers, baby, was he not amazing as a third down? Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying
he was brilliant.
Like Jennings now.
Yeah, like Jennings now, because again, we can argue the system, but you also get in the quarterback that knows him and can actually get the ball to him. You put him into a different scenario with this is me, oh my God, backhandedly praising Jimmy G for a second here. But like Jimmy G was a better quarterback than Mac Jones. So, in terms of like how Jimmy G can anticipate his field of vision at that time with that player. So I just think a really, really quality quarterback can make average players elevate their games purely just by their own ability alone.
Can we just quickly go back to Ollie's face then, when Phil said that Jimmy G was a better quarterback than Mac Jones?
He was. Jimmy G was at one point a much better quarterback than Mac.
But is that because he had better coaching? Is that because obviously the tenure towards the end of his time in the Patriots, Belichick was awful. It was awful coaching. It was basically a mess behind the scenes.
I will die on the sword saying Mac got failed by New England.
That's my point. Where Jimmy G goes to the best
this guy, his rookie season went to the Pro Bowl. He took them to the playoffs in his rookie season.
He was a replacement for the Pro Bowl.
His number one target, shut up, Ollie, was Kendrick Bourne. And him and Kendrick Bourne were on fire that year. So there's my argument now. Mac Jones is a good quarterback. He was just failed by New England. And I hate saying that.
But let's just remember, Jimmy G did take the Niners to a Super Bowl.
But that's
your coaching staff is so much better than
and he was 3 interceptions away from actually winning us the Super Bowl as well, if I distinctly remember. So a quality quarterback can win you the Super Bowl, but like Josh Allen, it could also lose you the Super Bowl.
And like some quarterbacks, like Trent Dilfer, for example, going back to him, you can be a big quarterback, but offensively can win you the title.
Exactly.
I'm trying to think who the most likely person to be is Trent Dilfer in this season. I'm trying to think of average quarterback.
Zach Wilson. If Zach Wilson wins the Super Bowl, oh my God! Like that is the equivalent. No, that is, isn't it? Like if Zach Wilson wins the Super Bowl, that's the 21st century equivalent to Trent Dilfer.
Nick Foles.
I think of a really good defense has got a really bad quarterback. I don't think Denver's defense is as amazing as other teams. It'll be. If Aaron Rodgers goes down, it'll be like whoever's his backup is, because that's a great defense. And I think that they won 7-8 games last year with Zach Wilson. Whoever else was, I forgot who else was playing quarterback.
Was it Boyle? Tim Boyle?
Tim Boyle, yeah.
It is Tyrod Taylor is the backup.
So I think if Rodgers goes down again, or if that ankle footage recently on training is as bad as it looks, Taylor comes in, I think that could be the 2024 equivalent of the 2000 Trent Dilfer.
But what about in Kansas as well? Because they've got a good defense in there. Carson Wentz the backup.
I would love that. It'd be a real 180 in reverse to what he had happened to him with Nick Foles coming in. I think I've always felt sorry for him because part of him must have felt gutted that he wasn't the one starting. But I would love it if he came in. Mahomes got injured. Wentz comes in and he has like a Nick Foles-esque run. That would be actually. Well, I love it to be that to happen and. Super Bowl 58 in 59, 58 in New Orleans. He throws a winning touchdown to Lewis Rees-Zammit. That'll be amazing. So I've got reason to cheer them on now. I've got a reason to cheer on the Chiefs now, which I didn't have maybe last year.
My eldest son's a Chiefs fan, so I get that.
That must be brutal. Then yourself, you pick Man U, so you sort of know how it's like to pick the best team in the league. And the Patriots, for that matter, actually.
I was back in the day. It was either Liverpool or United, and the guy that hated supported Liverpool, so I went United.
Yeah,
I was 6.
Leeds.
Right. So we will end the podcast here. This will be released on the 7th, on the next Wednesday. That's going to be the 20th of June, I believe. That is next Wednesday. So that'll be it'll be in a week's time. So you may not quite know what there is to look forward to on your podcast, but in your episode next Thursday, which will be tomorrow when this podcast is released, what can people listening at home look forward to on the Third and Long podcast?
Good question. Well presented.
I believe coming up, whether it be that episode or in a couple of episodes, we are going to do a full ranking 1 to 32 of all the starting quarterbacks for next season.
We have got predictions coming up. I know we are going to be looking at the Madden Cursed.
Oh, I love that.
How true that is.
Yeah.
Madden releases on the 11th.
Yeah, so I'm gonna do a deep dive from the original John Madden football, and compare the front cover players and how well they did in that particular season that follows.
I'm looking forward to seeing the Antonio Brown version.
That could be a whole episode in of itself. Like, honestly, it's
the ultimate Madden curse. That is the
I will always
say
Antonio's career went downhill when he took that hit.
Literally, the Fontes perfect hit.
Yeah, he was out, and he's never been the same since.
No.
In the head or ability-wise. You know,
well, he's just recently declared bankruptcy, hasn't he?
Yep.
Owes a lot of money.
Like, to a lot of his baby mamas. He bankrupted the Arena Football League team that he brought. He's just gone crazy. He should have literally took a check out of Ocho Cinco's book and literally just don't spend anything for his entire career and just wear fake jewelry.
Yeah, I think it's there are some players that have managed their money well. I think there's in multiple sports. There's some players that I think Matthew Firmini is one of the richest post-career footballers ever. I think but in some players, some sportsmen don't manage money well. There's so many. Happens a lot in NFL. A lot of players do go bankrupt within there's a number of years after retiring. And you think about Gronkowski, how he was so clever was that he used to spend purely just like sponsorship money. He never actually spent his wages. He only spent like money that he got from like deals and all. He never actually spent his actual salary. And now, obviously, he's looking a bit like a poster boy of CT. We look at him on the Brady roast, but he's obviously been part of money, which maybe other quarterbacks, other NFL players maybe haven't been. But yeah, as I said before, when you've come on before, don't forget to check out their podcast. It is a really good one. And we are actually doing also on this podcast a comparing quarterbacks and ranking. And we've done it for 2 years now. So our third edition of ranking quarterbacks from 32 to 1. So I'm looking forward to seeing how yours compared to ours and seing what differences we have. That'll be with me. And
your quarterback is going to be in the bottom 10 for me, mate.
He will be in my top 10. He'll be in my top 15, I think. But not in he'll be in that sort of Kirk Cousins territory and like that territory. But him and Dak are basically the same quarterback, in my opinion. So, I think they'll be very close when it comes to rankings. But yeah, I think, you can all probably guess both podcasts who's number one in overall. I think that's going to be the most obvious first choice in years. But I think
it depends what these two put in.
If Brock Purdy's number one, I'm going to be fuming.
Well, I mean, if you check out the Third and Long Twitter, you can see my top 5 from a couple of months ago. I believe I actually quoted one of an Across the Pod tweet.
Oh,
you named your top 5.
Yeah, I did mine, and that is another spoiler. You can find out my top 5. But yeah, that is where we'll end the podcast for today. So once again, huge thank you to Ollie, and Phil for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Andy.
Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure, boys. And yeah, don't forget to check out Third and Long Podcast on all podcast networks, and also check out our other episodes we've done in the last few weeks. Otherwise, see you guys next time.